Morning. I would like to call to order today, Tuesday, September 16th, the public hearing of the City of Tampa's Historic Preservation Commission. Welcome, everyone. I am Carrie Ann, the chair of the commission. If you're here to present, please be thorough but concise, and at the microphone, identify yourself, your relationship to the project before beginning your presentation. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Staff will briefly introduce the application. Applicants and staff shall have the rights to give testimony and to present witnesses and documentation. Time shall be limited to 30 minutes. Staff then will present the staff report. We will then ask for public comments. Please state and spell your name clearly if you are here to speak for or against the project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes. So take some time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following the public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The commissioners will ask questions of the applicant and staff. The public hearing will then be closed. The only comments that will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to the questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the city ordinance, chapter 27 of city zoning code, and the testimony given at the public hearing. The HPC can only act on items that are within a specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and or approvals. If you have already done so, please silence your cell phones. Introduction of the commissioners, starting at my right.
Thank you very much. My name is Stephen Sutton. I am a registered architect. I also hold the architectural historian chair for this commission.
Susan Swift, urban planner.
Bruce Gibson. I'm a retired architect.
Laura Harrison, professor at the University of South Florida.
And I'm Carrie Ann Canch, the chair. And I'd like to introduce the staff. I have Dennis Fernandez. I have Elaine Lund, Alexis Guzman, Heather Bond. I have legal, Camara Pettis-Mackel, and then we have Jared Vermon. Now, would somebody like to make a motion to accept the minutes from the July 15th, 2025 public hearing?
I move that we accept the minutes from the July 15th, 2025 meeting as presented.
Anyone would like to second the motion?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. All in favor, no opposed to accept the minutes from July 15th, 2025 public hearing.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architectural Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Welcome to this morning's public hearing, and welcome to our applicants and those joining us, those viewing us on CTTV. Just a couple brief announcements. First, I did want to welcome Jared Varnum, who's our newest staff member to the Architectural Review and Historic Preservation Division. He was recently hired within about a month ago to fill the vacancy that occurred when one of our previous long-term employees had retired. And Alexis has been sort of filling two jobs for quite a while since that happened at the beginning of the year. So much thanks to her for that. Jared will be transitioning into the role played normally by Alexis over the last couple years. And so he's shadowing her and picking up things very quickly. So we look forward to his role with our commission. In your packets also, hard to believe that this is occurring, but we do have the 2026 HPC calendar for your review. Please take a look at the dates on that calendar. That will be, if it hasn't gone out to you digitally yet, it will go out to you digitally. It does have our planned hearings for next year, next calendar year. We still have one more meeting left in this calendar year, though. So if you have any questions or know of any issues with any of those dates, feel free to let me know. We'll just make note of that. Next, did want to let you know that in your packets also is this month's segment of Tampa Bricks and Mortar newsletter. It's a reoccurring newsletter that's produced by the staff. It's also available on tampagov.net. And we're highlighting not only our normal segments on preservation standards and 100-year-old houses in our city or buildings, but we did feature the Interstate Historic Preservation Trust Fund grant program, which is an incentive that's also administered through the division. And it is our subject of this month's Preservation in Progress. So with that, I'll ask Elaine to come up and present that segment.
Thank you. Good morning, Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff. This morning for the Preservation in Progress, we are presenting a little bit about the Interstate Historic Preservation Trust Fund grant program. This fund provides grants to homeowners and low-interest loans to commercial property owners for the rehabilitation of historic structures. Specifically, the program began in 2005. It was established with the proceeds generated from the sale of historic buildings impacted by the Interstate 4 and Interstate 275 expansions. The program originated through the Section 106 process to help alleviate some of the impacts of the interstate expansions and on the National Historic Districts. The mission of the program is to accelerate the exterior historic preservation of properties in the Tampa Heights National Register Historic District, the West Tampa National Register Historic District, and the Ybor City National Historic Landmark District. Several buildings that were in the right-of-way that was acquired by the Florida Department of Transportation initially were relocated and rehabilitated by the Department of Transportation, or FDOT. And you can see that happening there on the slide in front of you. General eligibility requirements for this program is that the property must be located in one of these districts. and it has to be constructed within or more than 75 years prior to the date of the application. All proposals must adhere to the Secretary of the Interior's standards and the applicable design guidelines if they are located in one of the local historic districts. Funds may not be used for acquiring the property, and the work must not yet have been initiated. So to date, we have awarded over $1 million in grants, over $4 million in low-interest loans, and about $24,000 in matching grants, which are limited to certain properties that were relocated and are now owned by nonprofit organizations. The grant program, as I stated, has awarded over $1 million to homeowners, so we're celebrating that this month. The purpose of the Trust Fund Grant Program is to enable the owners of historic properties to preserve the character and the structure of their homes by providing exterior preservation funds for eligible projects. The applicants can apply for between $5,000 and $25,000. We recently raised the limit on that within the past couple of years. The property must be the legal homestead and residence of the applicant, and it is income limited to 140% of the median household income limits. Eligible activities include the structural stabilization and exterior restoration, rehabilitation, or reconstruction of architectural details. We typically have submission cycles open twice a year, and more information is available on our website. These are a couple of the recent projects that have been completed. This property at 1219 East 17th Avenue, some people are aware, is the Wall House. It was built around 1923 and it's located in the Ybor City National Historic Landmark District and the Ybor City Local Historic District. The project's scope included re-roofing with architectural shingles and repairing and repainting the retaining wall around the perimeter of the property. This property was a previous recipient of the grant over 10 years ago, in which the windows for the house were restored. This project at 410 East Hugh Street was a window restoration project. The building dates from 1925 and is located in the Tampa Heights Historic District, both the local and National Register historic districts. And the project scope included the repair of the wood windows and wood trim. The applications for the grant program, we do have a cycle open for these applications right now, and the fall 2025 cycle has an application deadline of October 1st. This is a photo shows another one of the projects that was completed through the trust fund. I believe this was a loan in this particular case, but this is located in the Tampa Heights Historic District as well. So that is this month's Preservation in Progress, and for additional information, you can learn more in this month's Tampa Bricks and Mortar newsletter. Thank you.
Thank you, Lane. So as part of our effort with Preservation Progress is to highlight not only projects within the historic district, but events and opportunities as well related to historic preservation. And so the Interstate Historic Preservation Trust Fund is just one caveat of incentives that are offered for historic preservation. There's others such as the ad valorem tax exemption program, the historic federal tax credit program, and then often we will partner with other types of incentives that are offered through our housing division or through our community redevelopment areas to kind of leverage the ability to achieve some of the results that you saw. So we continue to try to identify those opportunities and work with property owners to be able to benefit from that. Moving on with the agenda, we'll now discuss conflicts of interest and ex parte communication, and our legal counsel will lead that discussion.
Good morning. Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the Legal Department. Will the commissioners please state whether or not they've had any ex parte communications regarding any of the items that are on the agenda?
None.
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 Thank you. Additionally, will the commissioners please state whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are on the agenda?
None.
I have
None.
none.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. We have no continuations to act upon today, so we'll move to the swear-in. Anyone in the audience who's going to be presenting or providing testimony, if you could please stand and raise your right hand, including staff.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be providing today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
With that, we do have two items that require your consideration and action this morning. The first is a redesignation of a contributing resource that was relocated in the Ybor City Historic District, and Elaine will lead that discussion. The case number is HPC 25-000012.
Thank you. Again, Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. So this morning, we are looking at a project in the Ybor City Historic District. The item for review is the redesignation of a relocated contributing structure in this historic district. This property was relocated from 1306 East 14th Avenue, a block away, to 1318 East 15th Avenue. Upon relocation, a contributing property must be considered for redesignation at its new site. The request, as I stated, was for redesignation of a contributing relocated structure. The application was submitted by the property owner on January 31st of this year. And as a little bit of background, the Barrio Latino Commission approved the relocation with a variance on March 28th, 2023. The variance was to allow for the placement of the building on this rather short parcel at the northwest corner of 15th Avenue and Avenida República de Cuba. The HPC is authorized by the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances to review applications regarding the status of buildings within our locally designated historic districts. The criteria for review is set forth in National Register Bulletin 15, How to Apply the National Register Criteria for Evaluation. This bulletin defines the categories of historic properties, including buildings, sites, structures, objects, and districts. It reviews the significance criteria for listing in the National Register, which is paralleled in the City of Tampa's code, and as one of the requirements for designation. And the bulletin also discusses how to evaluate the integrity of a property. With regard to whether individual properties can contribute to a historic district, the bulletin provides that contributing properties must possess physical integrity from the period of the district's significance and share the historic associations of the district. The subject building was located at 1306 East 14th Avenue on land owned by the Florida Department of Transportation, or FDOT. The site is shown on the map in green. You can see it on the district map as indicated by the green arrow, and on the inset with the green rectangle. And it was relocated to 1318 East 15th Avenue in 2023. And that site is indicated with the red arrow and the red rectangle. Both sites are located in the locally designated Ybor City Historic District, placing them within the area that is under your review. This is the 1915 Sanborn Company map showing the building at its original site on the 1300 block of 14th Avenue. It's outlined in green. The relocation site where the building now stands is shown in red, and as you can see at that time, it was vacant. This is the present-day aerial map, showing again the original site in green and the relocation site in red. You can see the proximity to Interstate 4 there, just on the other side of the street from the original location. So the Florida Department of Transportation is currently undertaking improvements to the I-275 and I-4 interchange. This aerial photograph shows some of the recent work. I believe this is from earlier, maybe January of this year. Looking at the image, we're facing west, and 14th Avenue is shown on the north side of I-4. So you can see how much of 14th Avenue has already been impacted by this project. The building's original site at 1306 East 14th Avenue is shown here as indicated by the green arrow. FDOT's planned improvements at this site include the realignment of 14th Avenue and sidewalk improvements through a portion of the site. Under this plan, the building had to either be relocated or demolished. The Department of Transportation advertised this building for sale, and the new owners, or applicants, relocated the building to its present site. These are just some photos showing you how the building appeared at its original location on 14th Avenue. You can see that it's a bungalow with some typical features that you see in bungalows, with the wide overhangs, the inset front porch, and the single hung windows and wood trim. This is the building right after its relocation in early 2024. I note that the porch and the foundation had to be are not usually part of what gets relocated. So a new foundation has to be provided on site, and the porch needed to be reconstructed as well. And this is a more recent photograph of the building now from this year, showing the property as it has been set down on the site on its new foundation and with its reconstructed porch. Additional work has included re-roofing and I believe repainting of the structure clearly. Just to go through sort of an overview of the Ybor City Historic District and its significance. Back in 1973, a professor, I believe, at the Hillsborough Community College initiated a survey of the Ybor City Historic District, and additionally encouraged participants from the Historic American Buildings Survey to document several of the buildings and the features within the area. This included documentation of the 5 globe lamps, which are iconic to the district, as you can see there, and several of the other elements of the district, including certain factories, commercial buildings, and the iron railings found on various buildings throughout the district. The original Ybor City Historic District was listed in the National Register in 1974, encompassing the commercial center of Ybor City. In the late 1970s, the Association for the State and Local History identified Ybor City as one of 40 very significant ethnic communities in the United States. And additional survey work was completed throughout the 1980s, culminating in Ybor City being listed as a National Historic Landmark District in 1990 with the expanded boundaries that it still has today. Ybor City is considered significant on a national level for its late 19th and early 20th century multi-ethnic and immigration history, its role in the economic and industrial development of the area, and its architecture, most notably the concentration of cigar factories and industrial buildings, its commercial and commercial residential buildings in the Central Corridor, its social clubs, civic facilities, and residential buildings, including cigar worker housing. Locally, the Ybor City Historic District was created by the state legislature in 1975, and it was recognized by the city of Tampa in 1985, along with establishing special zoning categories for the district at that time. In 1985, certain regulations for the Barrio Latino Commission were also established, giving it purview over the appearance of the significant historic buildings within the district. In 1990, yes, I said that, Ybor City was designated as a National Historic Landmark District. The district meets National Register criteria A, B, and C, which correspond to the National Historic Landmark criteria 1, 2, and 5. So those, to sort of summarize that, for its significant events, significant persons associated with the district, and both C in the National Register criteria and National Historic Landmark criteria 5 deal with districts and their how they may be a concentration of properties that individually may not be significant, but as a collection make up an area that is identifiable as a historic community. So the application criteria for what we're reviewing this morning is in section 27261B of the city's code. If this is an owner-initiated application for a relocated building in a historic district to retain its status as contributing. And this application was completed on January 31st of this year. Reviewing the National Register Bulletin 15, this building contributes to the integrity of the Ybor City Historic District as it was built within the period of significance, which for Ybor City is 1886 to 1940. You saw that it was on the 1915 Sanborn map, indicating that it was present at that time. The building must embody the distinctive characteristics of a type of architecture from this period represented throughout the city, and the bungalows, specifically on the north side of Ybor City, are found throughout the district. And it maintains its historic relationships to its site and setting. So it is still located within the district and continues to convey its essential historic physical features and contributes to the character and the integrity of the district as a whole. The staff is recommending that 1318, it should be East 15th Avenue, meets the application criteria of section 27261B and the criteria found in National Register Bulletin 15 as a historic resource that maintains the character and integrity of the Ybor City Historic District. And therefore, we recommend approval of the request to redesignate the status of this building as contributing and the amendment of the Ybor City District Building Inventory. With that, the applicant, Mr. John Dingfelder, is here this morning and I believe is available. Turn the podium over to him for a moment.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Council. My name is John Dingfelder. My wife, Lynn Marvin Dingfelder, and I are the owners of this property. Staff has been wonderful, Dennis and Elaine. We appreciate all your help for the last couple of years on this. There is a slight typo in that staff recommendations. I want to make sure it doesn't follow its way into the resolution. It says 1318 East 14th Avenue. The new site is East 15th Avenue. So I've been confusing that for a couple of years now. Anyway, this project's been a labor of love. When I showed up at the pre-bid conference, the DOT folks said this was the third time that it was going up for bid, and nobody was showing up to buy it and to move it, because buying it was the easy part, but moving it was more challenging. And so I went home to my bride and I said, this is going to be fun. This is going to be exciting. And she kind of rolled her eyes, as she does with most of my harebrained ideas, but she went with it, and it's been a labor of love, and we're very proud to have saved this cute little house. We love We love the city, we love Ybor, and the historic district was very valuable. So we've done everything we can to preserve it in a very authentic manner. One of the things that was very interesting, that last criteria Elaine mentioned about consistency with the surround, you know, when we moved it, it was a very small lot we moved it to. And staff was very insistent, and now I see why, to make sure that when we moved the house, that it lined up perfectly with the house next door. There was only one house next door because we're on the corner. But that we lined it up perfectly with the house next door, not only up and down the block, but also vertically. So our porch level is the same porch level as the folks next door, and forward and back as well. And at the time, I was kind of like, yeah, that's sort of a pain in the butt, you know. But in hindsight, I'm glad, because it does work. And when you drive by it, we're right there by the academy, by the school. But when you drive by it, you really can't tell that it was ever moved. It looks like it was always there. Anyway, appreciate your consideration. Thanks for your service. And if you have any questions after you close, I'll be glad to take them.
Commissioners, Dennis Fernandez with the staff. Just wanted to give a little bit of context because there's just so much information that's kind of coming to you at one time. At the beginning of today's meeting, we talked about the Interstate Historic Preservation Trust Fund and how that originated through a Section 106 process. The Section 106 process is a caveat of the National Historic Preservation Act, which requires mitigation in projects that federal dollars are expended within when they affect many things, but in this case, historic resources. And so that same project that originated before my tenure with the city is still going on today. There's a memorandum of agreement that was applied to the Ybor City Historic District, in which structures that were going to be impacted by the district had to sort of first tier. There was a group that had to be relocated, so there were 69 of those. And then there was a second tier that the first tier that were relocated had to be rehabilitated and then sold back to residents in the city, property owners in the city. The second group were relocated to city-owned lots and then sold in an unrehabilitated condition with the caveat that the purchaser had to rehabilitate them, and that's been completed. And then you had this third tier that we're trying to deal with now of the properties that didn't make that list. And those buildings are allowed to be demolished. In other words, the DOT and the Federal Highway Authority has met its obligation under the Section 106 process and thereby can demolish the remainder of those structures. And I think there's about 20 of those structures, some of which have been demolished. But as part of the mitigation within that agreement, those properties that were, or all the properties, but particularly the ones that were to be demolished, had to be documented under National Parks Service standards, and they had to be offered for sale to the public. And so what we're seeing here is that latter option. It's sort of like the last resort, the last chance for these properties to be saved, and that's a private investment at that point, where the property is advertised for essentially removal. That removal can be salvage and demolition, or that removal can be relocation. So we're very fortunate in this case that Mr. Dingfelder and his wife have come forward to relocate this structure, because if he hadn't, I heard him, tell me his modest bid, which became a substantial investment in this property, that this property most likely would be demolished already. So that being said, it's preservation beyond what a municipal government can offer, or the state. It's preservation of sort of rolling up your sleeves and getting to work. There's a lot of different elements that are involved in a house move. It's a tremendous undertaking. Even to move it over a very short distance takes a lot of things to come together. So I appreciate their effort, and we're very happy that we can be here today kind of going through this process instead of kind of Xing that one off of our map. Thank you.
So at this time, if the commissioners have any questions of staff or the applicant, you may proceed with that.
Yes, I have some questions. So that was a very polished report. Thank you very much, which we can expect from you, I think, pretty consistently. Thank you. And then I guess consistent with me, I always have questions about it. So one of the things that, and I think maybe rather than try to go back and forth with individual questions, I'll just kind of lay out what they all are and what my concerns are. So in the packet of information we got here, there's a number of photographs, one of which I don't think you spoke about. And so behind the cover page, there's a black and white photo. Doesn't identify when that was or if it corresponds with any of the district designations. And then likewise, when we get to page 9 of the report, there are photographs from 2012, and there's photographs from 2024 and 2025. And the first question, I guess, was if you can tell me where did that first black and white photo come in? And then the 2012 photo, is that how it was when it became a designated, part of the designated structure, I guess, within one of the districts? I'm not sure what that corresponds to. Okay. And I guess what I'm getting at is between those photographs, I see quite a difference in the front porch of the house, which I would say is the most distinguishing feature architecturally. And that is, part of the criteria under 27261B, item 5, evidence that the building structure or object has retained its historical and architectural integrity. So anyway, I have noticed that the porch has changed, and I was wondering if you can tell us something about that.
Yes, sir. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation Staff. I can tell you a little bit about that. This photo that's shown in black and white on the table of contents page of the staff report, this is from the 1980s survey of the historic districts. So this was an early survey photograph of the building and would have probably been prior to the establishment of the Barrio Latino's overview of the work on all of the buildings in the historic district. I think early in Ybor City's history as a historic district, the Barrio Latino Commission, and I don't have the dates exactly for which this changed with me, but I do know that early on, the Barrio Latino Commission was only given the authority to review changes to some of the significant buildings that are called out in a very old ordinance in the districts and the ones that were located and considered contributing in the National Register District. Changes that may have occurred to this porch early on would not have been reviewed by the Barrio Latino Commission. You mentioned the 2012 pictures. That was just part of our photographic inventory update of the historic districts. So these photos show the building during its time as a part of the area of the Barrio Latino Commission. It would have been under the review of the Barrio Latino Commission. The alterations that occurred prior to, between the 80s and 2012, we don't have any records in our file that indicate that anything was approved during that time period, but this is the only other photo that we had in our case file for this property well, these, I guess, are the only photos we had in our case file for this property.
So, sorry, so I just, to clarify, was this how the house looked when it was included in, I think there are 3 different dates of the local historic district. Was this part of how it looked when it was determined to be a contributing structure in the local district?
It
Any
would
way of
have
knowing
been
that?
determined to be contributing to the local historic district in, at the time the first map was adopted, I believe in the, sometime in the 1980s, so after the initial survey, but early on.
Sorry, so otherwise, no explanation as to why once it was moved, it lost the waist-high brick piers and a different shaped columns, et cetera.
I can't address that, I'm sorry. I don't have that knowledge.
Are you ready for a motion? Or is there more discussion?
You have to do public comment.
Would anybody like to make a public comment? Do we have any? Okay, well, this part of the hearing is now closed, and the commissioners can discuss amongst themselves. We're talking amongst us. Yeah, but porches change all the time, so I don't think that's actually an issue. Unless it's closed in, then that's different, because it changes the whole front part of the building. But the windows and everything else are in the same place. They're originally, none of that has changed. And it was gonna originally be demolished because of the expansion of the expressway.
I have to agree. I think there are enough other contributing factors to this house being placed at this site, and it would be nice if those were there, but I think there's so many other benefits to this action, and if this wasn't there, or A, it's been preserved, and B, what could be built at this lot, wouldn't be anything potentially like the massing and the look of this building. So I think it's got several positives, and that's a minor thing in the scheme of what's been achieved here.
I'd like to further that comment. I agree with the fact that porches have a habit of changing. I think one of the contributing factors why some of this pier work may have not reappeared is that in the change from the site to site, and with the desire to align the face front and the porch height and floor height with adjacent buildings, forced this building to be taller, further off the ground than it was in its original location. And I could see how looking at, the placement of piers similar in nature to what was there before on 14th Street to be a little bit out of scale and out of proportion to what was there in the first place. It's a judgment call at that point in time to me. The fact of the matter that the porch remains and the sitting rail remains, I think, is a major contributing factor to its maintaining of its intended fabric.
I'd also like to further that comment. I think that the overall project to preserve this structure will contribute to the district, and I think that while there are some changes to the porch that may have been inevitable, the overall property is significant and has remained largely intact and therefore should be preserved and designated.
I have no further question or comment.
Yeah, I agree. I think too that originally, I mean, the building was built a long time ago. So like, you know, the foundation probably slumped. And then also, now with all the storms and everything going on, it probably, the original foundation is probably different. And also the lot too, because when you put something on a new lot, the foundation is usually different. So the porch will probably reflect that. But I agree as well. I think it was the other option was the building would have been demolished because there's no buildings on that street. So currently there's only like 3 buildings I see in that photo, or 4 that are left on the street, but everything else is gone. So I agree.
Sorry, just one last thing. Well, I'm going to continue to disagree. I am of two minds. I am glad that the bulk of the building is there, but it's a fairly plain building of no particular distinction except for the front porch. It is significant in the way worker housing was developed in Tampa related to the cigar industry, and I appreciate that. But if we're seeing a deterioration of original materials and original details from the time it was designated in a local district to its current siting, I think we're not really doing a great job of historic preservation. You know, these houses were almost identical. The only differences might have been in the front porches, whether that was an expression of an owner or a particular builder or just the carpenter that showed up, we don't know. But anyway, we're trying to preserve these as historically accurate representations of our culture, how people lived, what their aesthetics were, and what their skills were of the day. I think that the change from 2012 to 2024 is unfortunate, and I think it's fairly significant. Thank you.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request to redesignate the contributing status for a building or structure relocated within an historic district or a historic conservation overlay district for the property located at 1318 East 15th Avenue, because the application does meet the criteria established in the National Register Bulletin 15 for item number C, criteria number C, the property embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction, or represents the work of a master, possesses high artistic value, or represents a significant and distinguishable entity whose components lack individual distinction. I do think that as I said, there are enough materials, style, massing of this house that it is appropriate and to be redesignated on this site. And that's, I think, that we've provided enough evidence and sufficient reasoning for redesignating it. And I could amend my motion, if that's appropriate, to include criterion A, associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history, if that's relevant to the landmark district itself. So it would include both A and C criterion.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye. or me.
So
Kamari-
we have. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead and read what the vote was.
Yes. So I will pass this as approved. 4 in favor and 1 opposed.
Additionally, Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the legal department, as indicated on the staff report on page 2, and I neglected to provide this information on the sample motion, but based upon the commissioner's approval of the request to redesignate, page 2, the last section of the last paragraph asks for the commissioners to make a motion to amend the Ybor City Historic District building inventory and map. So based upon the motion that was just approved, I'd ask the commissioners to also make a motion to amend the Ybor City Historic District building inventory and map, which is the last sentence on page 2.
Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to amend the Ybor City Historic District building inventory and map to include this structure?
So moved.
Anyone second?
Second.
Who are in favor?
Aye.
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 All in favor of amending sorry. All in favor of amending the Ybor City Historic District building and inventory map to include this structure has been approved, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioners. Have a good morning.
Morning. Heather Bonds, Historic Preservation Specialist. I'll be presenting HPC 25-000029, a local historic landmark designation for the property located at 2708 North 18th Street. Just 1 minute as I pull up my... All right, thank you. Just a brief introduction into our historic local landmark program. This program and the designations protect those properties that have been determined to be of distinctive character, architectural value, and cultural significance to the city. Each structure represents a piece of physical development of Tampa's history. From the grand Tampa Bay Hotel to the modest shotgun structures that were built by the hundreds to support the early cigar industry, each building was constructed to satisfy Tampa's booming growth as the city transformed itself from a farming community to a major urban center. Evaluation criteria is based on the National Park Service criteria to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Each site considered must meet at least one of these criteria. In addition, they must have a quality of significance in American, state, or local history, architecture, archaeology, engineering, and cultural, and possess integrity of location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. We have used this consideration in today's nomination. I'll briefly introduce the property. The Nieto Fuente building is the last known Buckeye cigar factory in Tampa. It was constructed circa 1923 in a frame vernacular form by the Nieto Brothers Cigar Company as a simple 2-story frame building with a small second-floor apartment. The building is associated also with Arturo and Carlos Fuente and the Arturo Fuente Cigar Company, who owned the structure from 1960 to 1976 and is significant to Tampa's history as a leading cigar manufacturer. The property is located on the south side of 17th Avenue at the corner of North 18th Street. Cascadian Park and Pool is to the west. You see the nice park there. And you'll also note 2 historic cigar factories. What today is called the J.C. Newman Cigar Factory down here to the south. And the Perfecto Garcia Factory at North 19th Street and East 18th up here. Also note the density of housing. This was once the close-knit community of cigar workers who filled these factories. Here is another aerial view looking from the south, showing the interstate, and this is the current aerial view and form of the subject site. This is the 1925 Sanborn map. Interestingly, the sun porch, which encroaches over the property line, is not shown originally in 1925. It is shown on the 1931 Sanborn map, so it appeared sometime after 1925. We can confirm that half of the structure at this time was 2 stories, while the west half and rear were 1 story and an auto garage to the rear. Here. With that introduction, I'd like to introduce Roger Grunke as the applicant to present the rest of the request. Mr. Grunke? Let me close mine down for you for just a minute. Okay. Mr. Grunke.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Roger Grunke. I'm a registered architect and licensed building contractor. The project here, as introduced by the staff, is a fascinating project. What I have here shown to you is a map of the entire district, and as you, I'm sure, already know, it's knitted together conglomeration of different district types. The overall boundary is the local district, but still the national district extends out beyond the local district. So here's a blow-up of the north section of the area, and this is the area that concerns us. And as you can see in red, the red is the local district, and the green is the national district. So there is, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a considerable area of Ybor City I feel should be part of the local district, and probably many other people also, but for whatever reason at the time the district was formed, it was not incorporated into the local district. So here's a further blow-up. You see our subject property, which is circled. The south edge of the property actually touches the local district, but the building and the property is not in the local district. You see all the residential buildings to the north, and the fact that they are shaded is indicating that they're contributing. And indeed, this area is rich in historic fabric. However, the local district seems to be moving ahead in restoration. This is a cigar manufacturing plant. I think it's the only plant in Tampa still producing cigars at the location, and also features a museum. This is an adaptive reuse of the Spoto building for offices. And another example of mercantile building. All of these are in the local district. The importance of this is that the full range of grant possibilities are available to those buildings in the local district. Another example, fine example, this is the Academy. And currently under renovation is the Sanchez y Haya rooming house. Okay, now back into the National District. This is a lovely structure, but it doesn't have the investment that we have seen in the examples that I have previously shown you. This building also, although it's being renovated, it is not being done to historic standards, and I think that possibly one of the reasons for that may have been the fact that it was not in the local district and not all of the grant possibilities were available. This street is Avenida de República de Cuba, and the entire length of the street it's a storybook of Ybor cottages and porches clinging to the sidewalk. It's a fabulous, but there hasn't been a lot of renovation on this. Same with this. These triplet bungalows are wonderful. Whenever I see there are some examples. There was another on 15th, I believe. There was an example of a triplet architecture. One was lost, so now there are only two there. This is a fine example of triplet architecture, but as you can see, in need of some care. So what is significant about this structure, and how does it compare to those that we have seen that have been renovated and have availed themselves of the grant possibilities? Well, to understand that, we have to sort of step back. Again, this is an example as a comparison. This building was a great deal of investment went in. There was moved to this site as part of the relocation program. But I am saying to you that I believe this building is equally as important, if not historically in many aspects, more important than many of the buildings that have already been renovated in the local district. And this is why. A Buckeye factory was it was a family enterprise that was operated out of the family's home. And this was very popular at the turn of the century in Tampa. This Sanborn map of the 1890s shows you just a couple examples of how peppered throughout what is now the downtown Tampa area, you can find references to these tiny cigar factories. These are the Buckeye cigar factories. And the Buckeye factories continued to operate alongside of the larger factories. They were either bought out by the larger factories or forced out through market competition. But they remained in our history sort of a cradle of the entrepreneurial spirit that was present in Tampa from the 1890s through, let's say, the middle of the 20th century. This is our building as it appeared in 1920. Whoops. Let's see, how can we go back here? No, go back. Thank you, thank you. This is our building as it appeared in 1925 when it was constructed by the Nieto brothers. And you can see that it was basically a one-story building with an apartment on the second floor on the eastern end, and that apartment included this fantastic little pop-out porch on the second floor, which still exists today. So the Nieto label was sold not in Tampa, but mostly in California, and that caused or gave reason for the firm to move to California, leaving the building vacant. It then became, after it was vacant, it became a cabinet shop, and eventually was purchased by the Arturo Fuente Company. So a little more of the history of the importance of this building. So the world experienced the Cuban Revolution, and then following that, the American embargo of Cuba. Carlos Fuente, Sr., CEO of the Arturo Fuente Company, produced the first well-received cigar that contained no Cuban leaf. This was the Flor de Orlando label, and this was done in approximately 1965. 62, Carlos Fuente was in Cuba, and the revolution had already taken place, but the embargo was about to begin. He purchased 3 years of tobacco, of Cuban leaf tobacco, and that carried his company through, so let's say to approximately 65. After that point, he experimented with non-Cuban leaves, and it was this Flor de Orlando that actually became a hit on the market, a non-Cuban leaf cigar that was a real hit. What this did was propelled his company economically forward. He was producing the cigars in the Buckeye fashion in his parents' home. And there was such a demand for this label that the home became too small, and they then sought larger facility. So approximately the late 60s, Arturo Fuente Cigar Company purchased the old Nieto building, and they did this, interestingly enough, with the money that they had received from the sale of the matriarch Cristina Fuente's home, which was taken by the highway. So the whole, when I first came to Ybor, I thought, oh, what a shame that the highway was constructed through the middle of Ybor. But in a sense, it's just part of the history of Ybor and part of the fabric. It had its negative side, but it also has given us some very positive opportunities. And this is an example of the opportunity out of a negative situation. So when they, after they purchased this building, they continued to experience great success and needed even more space. So they built this second floor. You can see it here, the second floor addition, and a concrete block addition on the south side of the building. So here's the historic significance. The Nieto Fuente building is the only known remaining example of a Buckeye cigar factory in Tampa. Buckeye factories were the 19th century cradle of Tampa's entrepreneurial spirit, and for this reason, they are due a great deal of respect. 2708 North 18th Street housed two nascent cigar companies, the Nieto Brothers Cigar Company and later the Arturo Fuente Company. Now, not only were they located there, but must remember that the cigar factories actually built the neighborhood and that they offered employment to the people who purchased homes surrounding the cigar factories. Some factories actually had mortgage programs for employees. And furthermore, the building served the Arturo Fuente Company at a critical period in the company's evolution, enabling the company's ascendance as one of the world's leading cigar manufacturers, as the neon sign on 7th Avenue says, Arturo Fuente, the world's finest cigars. Okay, so let's look. 1912, Arturo Fuente established Arturo Fuente Cigar Company. 1924, a fire destroys his building and his assets as well. With that, he then returned to producing cigars out of his home. 1925, a year later, Nieto Brothers constructed our subject building. 1959, the Cuban Revolution occurred. This time in 1959, the Arturo Fuente Company was operating out of Cristina Fuente's residence. 1962, the American embargo of Cuban goods was put in place, but Carlos Fuente, CEO of the Arturo Fuente Company, bought 3 years of Cuban leaf before the embargo was set in place. 65, success of the Flor de Orlando required larger production facilities, and approximately 1968, the Arturo Fuente Company purchased 2708 North 18th Street. 1976, Arturo Fuente Company sells the building to the Blanco family, and it became a cabinet shop. They sold the building because they were growing so rapidly and to such an extent they needed even more space. 2023, our building was purchased for adaptive reuse by Black Orchid LLC. So here's the building on the left. We have done a lot of work, sort of forensic, historic investigation, and we have found that you don't see it in the photograph on the left because the windows are covered on the first floor, but you do see the windows here in the rendering, in the architectural drawing. We also, by removing modern drywall in the second floor, we discovered the original openings that were the same size as the windows on the first floor, and we intend to restore those to the second floor. Now, you can see here the design calls for bringing the corner board here all the way down the face of the building and then across. What I'm suggesting that we do is that we treat this as two different periods. This is the 1925 period, and everything about that would be true architecturally to that period. This period, this area up here would reflect the 1970s when that was added, and what the most obvious is that the windows are aluminum windows, whereas below and in the original apartment, they are the wood classical windows. Rear of the building, we don't know, we don't have photographs of what the rear of the building looks like. We know that the two windows and the gables were the large windows because we've removed the drywall and have found the openings, so we will restore those. There must have been openings down here, and because of this loading dock, it's very possible that there was a larger opening. Since this entire back was changed in the 1970s, we are going to introduce series of French doors which will lead out to an addition. The addition will be a steel covered deck and porch to be used as a cigar lounge. The doors the design is taken from original doors of a building on 16th Street in Ybor, which Arturo Fuente Company also owned at one point, and the building was used as a for the drying of tobacco leaves. So we're making changes to the building, but all within the context of the period, and as much reflecting the information that our architectural forensics investigation under the drywall has given us. The proposed historic renovation and adaptive reuse will feature an event space, an outdoor covered cigar lounge, a retail space, and 4 residential rental apartments. Its restoration will extend the revitalization of North Ybor into the National Historic District. By granting this building its historic designation, it is not simply the building that will benefit, but it will open the door for that entire area that is currently just the National District to further investment and renovation. I'd like to show you a small clip here from Yes, okay. So this is a small clip from a YouTube presentation, The Fuente Family, and in this, this is so beautiful because it is Carlos Fuente describing the building as it was when they purchased it.
I ran out. Carlos and Arturo Fuente experimented with blends of tobacco from other countries until they finally found a blend that met with their satisfaction. The blend was called Flor de Orlando, and even though there wasn't a shred of Cuban tobacco in it, it was a success, and the company continued to grow. But soon the factory was outgrowing its small space in the Fuente home.
We got to a point that we grew our present place, and then I started taking part of my mother's house. I took one of her living rooms, I took the bedroom, and kept on taking more and more for the house. I remember we had to move all the furniture. I had to move all the furniture out to the street, middle of the street, to do the tobacco blending, the short filler blending. We used to blend all the tobacco, put them all in boxes, then clean everything up, and then put all the furniture back. It was a job.
So Carlos Fuente started looking for a new home for the company. He soon found it, a 2-story building in Tampa. It was the perfect spot, but how to pay for it?
I used to see a building on Ybor City. There was a building, a 2-story building, a 1.5-story building. It was one story. There used to be an old factory there, a small Buckeye, what they call a mom and pop shop. And they had an apartment upstairs. So I told my father, let's go and buy that one. My father told me, I ain't got how to pay for it. We can't buy it, you're crazy. So I told him, I'll get the money. So I knew at that time the expressway was coming through where we were at 13th Avenue. There was already a lot of talk about it. There was already in the newspaper that the road was coming, the highway was coming there. So I drew up a plan, a blueprint, to build at my mother's house a floor in the top. So I went to the city house and I told them I wanted the permit to build. So they told me okay, so they went to the back office and a few minutes later they came to see me and said, well, I can't give you a permit. I said, why can't you give me a permit? And they told me, well, because don't you know the high four is gonna go through there, we're gonna buy your property out. I said, yeah, but when? He said, well, it could be another year. I said, no, you got a problem. You either buy me now or give me the permit, and later on, when you buy me, you pay me for whatever I spent. No, we can't do that. It's okay, give me the blueprint, I'll go see my attorney. I said, no, wait a minute. So anyway, they bought us out a year before. So we went to the other building.
So that, I think that sort of encapsulates the most important events historically related to the building. Thank you for your consideration on this.
Thank you so much. It's really unique when you can hear the stories from a site directly from the source. It really puts the humanization into our structures. So thank you very much for sharing that. That's wonderful. I also want to piggyback on some of the things that he said. He showed some of the potential renovations and rehabilitation and changes to the structure. Today, we are strictly voting on the landmark status. What's important to note is that those changes will go to one of our boards to ensure that those changes are appropriate, which is great that we have an architect who is historically sensitive to those matters and is doing the research, whereas right now it is not protected and does not have to go through a review process. So he's just letting you know ahead of time that there could be some rehabilitation to move forward, and there might actually be some benefits available to them if they move forward, if we designate today, such as tax credits and stuff that may aid in that rehabilitation. Okay. And go back to my PowerPoint, please. All right. And now I'll review staff's evaluation based on the criteria I presented previously. The structure is preserved in its historic context, as you can see, with a row of cigar factory housing and a larger factory behind it. So that's very unique that for the past 100 years, we have the site context historically preserved. Even though those may change, we don't really get to see that very often, where a whole area has not changed in over 100 years. Its architecture is a simple frame vernacular form. The roof form is a cross gable roof with the front facing gable slightly taller and higher pitched than the side gable roof, which is lower sloped. The structure once had wood windows, which have been mostly replaced with aluminum windows. The structure was likely constructed prior to 1924. This is due to research in the Tampa Polk City directories, which list the Nieto Brothers Company located at 2308 19th Street in 1923. The Nieto siblings were listed at living at 1802 Michigan Avenue, which is actually just to the south corner here. But in 1924, the V. Nieto and Brothers cigar manufacturers are listed at 2708 North 19th Street. Thus, it can be derived that it was mostly constructed and cigar manufacturing was in operation by the end of 1923 to be listed in the 1924 city directory. Here are some of those historic alterations that happened through time. So I'll also make note that part of staff evaluation, we do consider changes to the structure through time. The Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation provides the following when addressing alterations to historic properties: that changes to a property that have acquired historic significance in their own right will be retained and preserved. The subject property underwent alterations with additions to accommodate the Arturo Fuente Company when they acquired the building for their cigar manufacturing operations. As this company holds historic significance in Ybor City's history, these alterations to the original footprint and massing have acquired their own historic significance in their own right and considered contributing to this landmark designation. However, some of the later alterations, which include changing wood windows to aluminum or infilling some of the windows, are not treated in the same manner and could be considered for removal in place of more historically sensitive treatments like returning to wood windows or reopening those areas through the certificate of appropriate process if designated. In conclusion of our review, staff finds that the structure meets criteria A, that the Nieto Fuente Buckeye is associated with Ybor City cigar industry, a significant economic and development period in Tampa's history. It is both part of the height of the cigar industry in the 1920s, represents the struggles through the Depression era, and the decline of the cigar industry due to the Cuban Embargo Act of the 1960s. It is the story of resiliency of cigar manufacturers and the eventual adaptations to the industry. It is also significant under criteria B for significance with lives of persons significant to our past. It is associated with Arturo and his son, Carlos Fuente, who are significant to Tampa's history as a defining cigar manufacturer who contribute to Ybor City's prominence as a reputable and defining leader in the cigar industry. Fuente is said to have purchased the last shipment of tobacco from Cuba to continue to offer real Havana cigars while others' stock depleted. His company, under his son Carlos, later experimented mixing with tobacco leaves from different countries and regions to create a product comparative to the sweet Havana tobacco. This led to the Arturo Fuente Company expanding and becoming a world-renowned name in the cigar industry. And we find that it's significant under criteria C. The Nieto Fuente Buckeye represents the Buckeye Cigar Factory, a type and use of building for small cigar factories often owned and operated by a family. This use type contributed to Ybor City's cigar manufacturing history, providing opportunities for families or individuals to enter the cigar industry. Many of the larger and well-known cigar manufacturers started as a small Buckeye. And of note, our landmark inventory doesn't currently have a Buckeye represented, so this would be a unique and the first of its type. Staff findings. A local landmark designation would protect this structure from inappropriate additions that alter the historic architecture's integrity or from complete demolition of the structure. Staff finds that the property meets the criteria for local historic landmark designation as provided in section 27-257. The denomination meets subsections 1, 2, and 3 of 2A, which align with the National Register criteria A, B, and C. Also note, the commission is to consider if the owner supports the designation, which they do.
and HPC's actions. Today, the board is requested to make a recommendation to City Council for or against this nomination. And staff is here for questions.
Commissioners, before we close the public hearing, I wanted to have an opportunity for the owner to come up and address the board as well. Liliana Fuente is here, and don't want to put her on the spot, but did want to get her support on the record. Thank you.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity. Obviously, this is very exciting for me, so I'm honored to be here. As you know, I'm the owner of Black Orchid and also the proud fourth generation of a family business in the cigar industry at Arturo Fuente. With that being said, I had the opportunity to purchase this beautiful old lady, and I am so excited to bring her back. And I promise you, I'll be quick because I only got 3 minutes. My goal here in purchasing this building wasn't to break it down, was to restore it. So I'm doing it all on my own. So I need all the help I can get to preserve her and keep my family's legacy alive in Ybor City forever. So thank you.
Can you just put your name on the record, please?
Liana Fuente.
Okay, now it's time for the commission to have any questions of the staff.
I would like to open up, please. I have a couple questions for staff. We've been given quite an impressive overview of the history regarding this structure, but I'd like to drill down for everyone's information the true basics of what's come before this board today. Please excuse me. We understand, if you will, in the first place, the Black Orchid LLC has purchased a contributing structure to the Ybor Historic District. And we recognize that this structure exists within the federal confines of what is defined as that district for their purposes. However, it is outside the confines of the city of Tampa's defined district for Ybor City. So as I understand things right now is that this application is brought to us voluntarily by the building's new owner for the express purpose of obtaining a local landmark designation individually for this structure to avail themselves of the protections and the oversight and the available resources of the city of Tampa. Am I reading this correctly?
That is correct. It is in the National District, which does not afford it protection through a local designation. This will provide it the protection and the requirements to go through the review process and the ability to be able to apply for our tax.
Thank you very much. That's all I have for the moment.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the presentation and thank you for the clarification on that we're making a decision based on the building today and not the plans for the building in the future. So this is the only example of Buckeye Factory left, right? We don't have one in our inventory.
Correct. We do not have one designated as a landmark.
Okay, and Buckeye, the meaning is a small factory, right? Like a mom and pop cigar shop.
That's correct.
And then what about frame cigar factories? I know we have brick ones, but like frame ones, Mason.
We do, I believe, have 2 framed cigar factories that are landmarked. I think the Olivia Cigar Factory is one that's still in Ybor City.
Oh, and I wanted to, can you pull up the slide of the dates of the additions? Because I don't think that's in the packet.
I believe that came from his PowerPoint.
It was just the one with the 3 dates of the additions.
Oh.
One of the last slides
Yeah,
you had.
yeah. I just didn't write them. Okay. And that's all I have to ask. Thank you.
I have a question. First of all, thank you for this really wonderful, comprehensive, interesting, and engaging presentation. As we can see on the slide here, there have been several additions to the property, and in evaluating its historical integrity, it certainly is important to recognize that some of those later additions are connected with the Fuente family and their purchase of the property. I just wanted to see if I could perhaps get a little more information about the demolition of the garage, which is pictured in 1925, 1931, and not in 1976. And as we are tasked with evaluating the overall integrity of the property, I'm just wondering if we have any information on why it was demolished or how that contributes to its historic significance.
Right, you can see in 1925, the footprint is slightly different than 1931, so we can assume, and in 1931, you also see it has a gray outline, which means it was of a different material. The first one was probably a wood frame. This one probably had cement block, indicated by the gray, with a small wood attachment, probably like a shed roof type of attachment to it. These, you know, by the time 1976, which is prior to any of the districts, it was just probably removed throughout time. We don't really have any information. As they indicated, we don't have pictures of the rear, so we didn't have any pictures of the garage either. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a couple of questions too. I had never heard the term Buckeye Factory, so I was wondering where in either past designations or local literature it speaks to Buckeye factories or Buckeye cigar factories. This relies a lot on that issue, and I'm just not familiar with that.
I do believe it's a local term. There is it's in my staff report that I referenced, there is a resource about Ybor City, and it uses that term. There's also a Spanish term that they use as well. I think it's also in the staff report. Let's see. But it is resourced in some of the documentation I have found.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I had, just as a follow-up, so this would be a local landmark. Is that just easier than amending the local district?
We could have done it one or two ways. We could amend the map in the future, but this is the path we took because we did want to represent the Buckeye type in our landmark inventory.
Okay, and then I think I have one or two more questions. One I answered. The houses next door are also not in the local district either.
That's correct.
And then I know we're not focused on that, but I hope because it's frame and because it's planned for event space, I know this isn't our topic, but I hope there are no fire code issues that, that would affect the integrity of the structure in the future. So I think it was really thorough report, really interesting. I did not know about Buckeyes other than peanut butter and chocolate. And so I think it's really interesting, and I was also educated. I did not know there were frame cigar factories, so when I drive by these sites, I like to not read the report until after. So when I drove by, it was like, oh my God, this is a frame cigar factory. So it's very cool, and I think it's great that that somebody's making a big effort to protect it this way. So thanks for answering my question.
I do think it's interesting in the Sanborn maps where it says no heat underneath them. Like,
yeah.
You wonder if that's part of it.
Thank you.
I'll just take this opportunity to say it was a fascinating presentation and history of the building. I've driven by there. It's sort of peculiar looking when you see the second floor amendment that Roger's calling a sun porch. It's great to have this kind of background, because driving by, I created a whole different history of the building in my head. And it's really fascinating about the history of Tampa and Ybor City, as well as to know about that building. Thank you for everyone that's contributed to this report today. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for including the YouTube video, because it actually showed the like progression of the factory over time and just the whole movement of the cigar making. But at this time, if nobody else has any more comments, we'll close the public, no? Okay.
Public comment.
Oh, rebuttal. Does anybody have any rebuttal comments? Or public comments? Seeing that there's none, we're going to close the public part of the hearing and the commissioners can discuss among themselves.
If the applicant doesn't have any rebuttal.
Oh, do you have any rebuttals? No. Seeing there's none, we'll close this section and we'll talk amongst ourselves. Thank you.
I'm willing to make a motion unless there's other discussion in the meantime.
If you guys want to discuss, okay.
I move to recommend Tampa City Council approve the request to designate the property located at 2708 North 18th Street for local historic landmark designation because the application meets the criteria established in City of Tampa Code Section 27-257 for the following reasons. A, the building site structure object criteria 1 was constructed or achieved its significance during the period of historic significance as delineated in the National Register of Historic Places guidelines or as established in the nomination pursuant to those guidelines. And criteria 2 has a quality of significance in American, state, or local history, architecture, archaeology, engineering, and culture, which is present in district sites, buildings, structures, and objects that possess integrity of location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association, and subsection lowercase I that are associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history, otherwise known as criterion A of the National Register criteria, and also subsection II that are associated with the lives of persons significant in our past, otherwise known as criterion B of the National Register criteria, and also subsection III that embody the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction, or that represent the work of a master, or that possess high artistic values, or that represent a significant and distinguishable entity whose components may lack individual distinction, otherwise known as criterion C of the National Register criteria. And further, section C of the same section, 27-257, that in addition to the criteria set forth in subsections A above, the HPC shall consider the following factor for landmark site. Number one, whether the owner supports the designation, and that has been confirmed by staff and by the owner appearing today.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Seeing that it's all in favor, this motion is passed.
Wow.
Thank you for all your help.
I will be back.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Just a couple last things. I have no submitted new business for today's hearing unless there is some item that you wish to raise.
Do we need to make a motion to accept materials presented at this meeting to the record?
Yes, that's,
Would anybody like to make a motion to receive the files submitted, the submitted documents and exhibits and the amendments, right, to the report?
correct.
So moved.
Anyone second?
I will second that motion.
Who are in favor?
Aye.
Seeing that all is in favor, the motion is passed.
Moving on, we do have one item that had been previously continued on your agendas. That's the annual election of officers. So each year, under your rules of procedure, chair and a vice chair are elected. Our previous chair, Ms. Cobb, concluded her term, and your vice chair, Ms. Canch, is currently serving in that capacity until an official election is held. So with that, I'd like to open the floor for nominations of election of chair to serve for the remainder of this term. Do I have any nominations?
I nominate Carrie Ann as chair.
I'll second that since she's doing such a stellar job.
Okay. And I just always like to confirm that that individual who's been nominated is willing to serve in that capacity. Ms.
Yes.
Cantor, you're able to serve?
Yes.
Thank you, and willing. So with that, are there any other nominations for a chairperson? Seeing none, if we could have a vote by show of hands to affirm that nomination? Congratulations. Next, I will open the floor for nominations for vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chairperson?
I believe Susan would have the next order of seniority on the commission, and I would nominate her as the vice chair if she is so willing to serve.
Yes, I would if it's.
Second. I second that.
Okay, we have Commissioner Swift has been nominated for vice chair. Any other nominations? Seeing none, by show of hands, could we show the support for that nomination? Thank you. Congratulations. We will definitely reflect that in our record for today and look forward to working with you moving forward. With that, that concludes the business for the staff. Thank you.
The time is 10:48, and that concludes the City of Tampa Historic Preservation Commission public hearing.
Thank you.